Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode with myself and Stephen. And this one is 100% Stephen's idea, and he's 100% starting this. We had a bit of an argument about the last episode, but he's absolutely rolling on this one. And we have just called this one word purpose. So, why purpose?
Well, as always, I've been doing a little bit of reflecting, as I do, and it suddenly dawned on me that I definitely made some decisions early on in my life that have sort of enhanced my purpose. And a lot of the time, when someone says, "What's your purpose?" you normally gravitate to current. So your purpose will become about some things that you've currently been working on or thinking about. Um, I myself am absolutely clear that my purpose was driven out of some decisions I made as a child, and those decisions were a driver. They gave me purpose. They gave me engagement. They gave me drive. They gave me passion. They gave me a wanting to want to succeed. And I suddenly thought, I'd love to put that out there on a podcast and talk about it, because maybe it might make other people reflect and think, actually, there were some decisions that I made as a kid, or there were some things that happened to me as a kid that 100% have driven me. I made some decisions about, not making my personal circumstances and things that happened to me as a kid impact how I was. So they were really key drivers. So when I was tired, at 7 o'clock at night, and Jack Shah was getting me to do the ledgers in the retail business, and I was really tired. My purpose was, I made a promise to myself that I was gonna drive myself and be as good as I could be. So I stayed an hour to get the ledger done. I'd get there early in the morning. I'd sacrifice things because my purpose was, I wanted to get to these things. And it just, it's one of those things where I think, how many other people feel that way, or how many other people don't feel that way until they think about it. And then by thinking about it, they go, well, actually, there were some things that happened to me that I think have driven me. Because a lot of people sometimes don't believe they have a purpose, or they can't think of one. And that's my point. I think we all have it, but we don't necessarily think about it in that way. It's a bit like a mentor. One of my first questions I often ask people is, have you ever had a mentor? And 9 times out of 10 people go, no. And then I always go, well, actually, you have. It's just that you haven't seen them as a mentor. Because a mentor is anyone that you've been able to have a really good conversation with, that shaped some of the things that you've thought about, or encouraged you, or given you sort of a platform to do something that you really wanted to do. So does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does, 100%. Because it was really interesting. Stephen and I were talking off air about this, and I think you said you were 8 when this purpose first came to light, and the fact that you've had this fire, this control, this focus since the age of 8 is going to be a massive reason as to why you've been as successful as you have. Because I can certainly be very, very clear with myself that I didn't, not in a positive way. I think when you reflect back in your childhood, for me, there were a lot of things like, I don't want to follow in my father's footsteps. I don't want to do this. I was very clear what I didn't want to do. And that definitely caused me, excuse me, some problems in my 20s, because I was sort of railing against what was in front of me. It was not as like, poor me or anything, nothing bad happened to me, but I just wasn't doing the best for me, because I was actually trying to avoid doing something that made me be like my dad. So that was quite interesting. But for you to actually have that focus, I think you will probably be in the minority, because, as you've already found from sharing this story, a lot of people sympathise and recognise it and relate to it, but they didn't have the strategy to deal with it. So first of all power to you, and that's really good. But also, don't worry if that is you that's only just waking up to it, because it's never too late. I mean, I started this business nearly 8 years ago now, and I continue now. I had no purpose behind it. I just was moving out of the quite successful family business that was being bought out of, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And I found I was getting quite good at managing people. So I started working with one of the companies that we had a small investment in, and I started doing some coaching with them. And it went quite well. Now, considering I was one of the owner's bosses, one of the owner's sons, for people to open up to me and talk to me and stuff, I thought was quite a good achievement, and I really enjoyed it. But it's still, at that point, I hadn't got purpose. As I went through it and I saw start to finish working with more and more individuals, then I began to get some clarity over why I want to do what I do, and why this is the direction I've taken, and how ultimately I just want to be able to sit back and look on all the number of people I've helped. But I would never have seen that as being my purpose. So even now at 43, I don't think I've got absolute clarity on what that is, and it's okay, but actually it's also really important to have. There's a really cool book, very short book called Ikigai, which that's a Japanese word, which is all about purpose. And if you haven't tried it, I'd really encourage you reading that book, because it talks about people who live to a long age in these certain locations. I don't want to give too much of the book away, but it's all about these people have specific purposes that they focus on, and this sort of, I don't know, pursuit of perfection as well within those purposes that they have, is their whole sort of lifeblood, if for want of a better word. So no, it absolutely resonates with me. I think the only difference that I have is how far down my purpose journey I am versus you. You're very, it's very clear to you, whereas for me, it's not something I started thinking about until I started coaching.
Yeah.
And now every client I work with, they don't get it. They think they have a purpose, and there are some really nice goals in there, but they're just that, they're goals. They're not really a purpose. And when we ask the question, I call it the Facebook question, as I call it. If you remember, there was that horrible craze of taking a picture 10 years ago versus today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's imagine we have another little Facebook craze. In 10 years' time, where are you? No one knows. They don't know. They haven't got clarity over what. So what the hell is the next 10 years about? Why are you doing it? What's the point? I get some reasonable answers from some of the more switched on clients, when they, switched on in that regard, not switched on in life, but just switched on to the whole idea of purpose. I get some better ones from some, but most of them, to be fair, have come to people like you and I, because they don't know, and they're probably getting that itch. A lot of my clients sort of crossroads in their life and or career. And therefore, I think what they're realizing, the reason they've reached out, is because they have this itch, and they don't know how to scratch it, and they don't know what it is. And very quickly, through sessions like with you and your clients, we realise they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and that's actually quite a problem.
No, absolutely. And I know it's quite fashionable now to talk about your why, but the reality is, it's when you have a purpose and when you have a reason for doing something, the person that turns up is very different.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset of that person is very different. The energy levels you bring to it is very different. The excitement is very different.
Yeah.
On those days that, we all have them, those days that you wish you hadn't woken up, they're easier to deal with because it's driving you forward. And I'm absolutely convinced that it comes to us all at different times. But when you do find your purpose, or when you do find your why, in some cases it can be life-changing. I know it was life-changing for me, and I know I was very, very young, and when I made some of those promises to myself, and if you look on my website and you see my values, my promises to my clients and my promises to myself, they're real. They're I feel them in my soul. I feel them deep, deep, deep down. And that's not make believe, and that's not for the cameras or for the podcast. I live by those. I live by them every day, and that why and that purpose, it's driven me to the point where I would argue, like, even in some cases, I'm a black middle-aged man, and when I was younger, I was a young black man in a world that potentially, in most scenarios, I had to work twice as hard as my white counterpart. Twice as hard. Absolutely. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was fact.
Yeah.
And because I had that purpose and that why that was driving me, sometimes people would look at me and go, "What is it? What happened to you that you can't stop? What happened to you in your life where you're just pushing and you're still going?" And I'll tell you now, Oliver and listeners, I was so determined that I wasn't going to be a statistic. Seriously, I was like, and the statistic is, if you want to know, I was brought up in Nottingham and Manchester. I lived in a place called Moss Side in Manchester, and really, if you think of the family I was born into and my life, I should either be incarcerated or 6 feet under. Those two, definitely. The third one would have never been on the agenda. And I've been able to achieve what I've achieved and failed where I failed because of that determination, because of that drive. So what I'm saying is those purposes and those whys can actually drive you to a point where you can better yourself. And I'm not saying that all childhood trauma is positive, because it's not. Trauma is horrific. It's a hard thing for anyone to suffer. But what I'm saying is, even as a child, that childhood trauma, I use that to drive myself. And I know this podcast will waken some people up. Some people might find it really difficult to hear. And again, as me and Oliver always say, if you're struggling based on this podcast, or it's ignited some visions and things about your childhood, then please come and reach out to us, or reach out to someone that you're close to that you can talk to, or even reach out to one of the professionals. But what I'm saying is, and I really believe this, and anyone listening, you may have suffered something in your childhood, but don't make that thing define who you are. Because I'm living proof that actually you can use that and drive yourself forward. And those of you that are probably sat there going, yeah, it's easy for you to say. It is easy for me to say those words, but I've lived it. I've really lived it. And that's where I'm coming from. And sometimes we do need to find that why. We do need to find that purpose. It doesn't come to us all like it came to me. Some people, it might come to them after this podcast.
Yeah.
It might come to someone a week from now. But look for it, because I think if you can grab hold of that and harness it, the person that turns up is so different.
Yeah. No, that's it's really good. It's really powerful as well. And it's just to sort of, I don't know, echo some of what you said as well. The things that happen to us, they then, this is definitely factual. I can't speak from specific experience because I've not had any. I've been very lucky not to have any traumas of any note. But it's certainly perhaps why I lack the fire that you have sometimes here to really force things through and get things done. But whatever these things that happen, they create thinking and thoughts in your head. Those thoughts aren't real. They are real events. They're memories or things that are triggered by them, but you can change that thinking. And that's exactly what Stephen, either knowingly or unknowingly, has done. He has changed how he thinks about a situation. And I give an example to try and illustrate this as best I can. If you take a cinema and 100 people in that cinema and they're all watching, I don't know, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and it's the first time they've ever watched it, and those 100 people aren't allowed to talk to one another afterwards, and you go and you speak to them and you ask them questions about their experience of that film, whatever it is, doesn't have to be Star Wars, it's just a bit about me, doesn't it? But you ask those 100 people in isolation what they thought of it, and I guarantee you will have had wholly different responses from a huge number of people, but they've all seen the same thing. So if you imagine that film that we're watching is actually an event in life, what it shows you is that people can have completely different thinking about the same example. A lot of people think, well, bad stuff's happened in the world, so here I am. Well, no, that's just something that's happened out there, and then you've interpreted what you've seen, and then the thinking that you've had, you've chosen to hang on to whichever ones you have done. And people like Stephen, who obviously use it as their fire, have chosen to look for some positive thinking in amongst there. Because there are an unholy amount of negative thoughts going through our heads. I always ask people to try and visualize them as clouds going over their head. And you can grab one of them anytime you want, but there are little rays of sunshine in there as well. Yeah. And if you look hard enough in the thoughts going through your head, you can pull yourself away from those negative thoughts. I know it sounds, I don't know, fluffy, hippie, something like that. I can hear some people not enjoying what they're hearing right now, but that's the people I'm really talking to, because you're the ones who, if you could try just that little bit harder, and you know I don't like the word try, so if you did actually look for that positive thinking in there, and you give yourself 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, you'll find it. You'll find a reason not to feel as down as you do, or as angry as you do, or as negative you do about what you're currently feeling. It's hard work. It's certainly, some people find it easier than others, but it's hard work. But those thoughts that are going to take you out of the negativity, they do exist. They are there. My examples are far less. I know you're going to bring them up because they just look trite compared to what you've been talking about, but I'm able to do it. And then when I don't do it, this is the final point, when I don't look for those positive thoughts, I know it's me, my choice. I chose not to. Yeah. So therefore, the rest of my day, my week, my month is on me. Yeah. So I don't know, that's how it comes across to me.
Yeah. And, lots to unpick there, and, we can't unpick it in 20 minutes, and it's probably something that we can talk about further down the line in the podcast, because it opens up so many other things. But what I would say, I'd leave the listeners and viewers with these statements. I am not very good. I am very good. Both statements are correct. it's up to you. It's what you think. And I think having a purpose, finding your why, whatever you want to call it, it starts with the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the manifesting. It starts with the visualization. It starts with those words. And if you can make a start, I truly think that we can all benefit. And don't be scared of being emotional. Don't be scared of crying, because you will. You may get very emotional. You may cry, because sometimes when oh gosh, I had a moment there. You get emotional. When it hits you, it can be very emotional. It can really hit you. But don't be afraid of that. That's not a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a sign that you're actually being at one with yourself and being honest with yourself about whatever that was that happened, and what you're now going to do because of it. What you're now going to do. So take it back. Take back that control. Those of you listening to this podcast where it's triggered something, take back that control. Think about what your purpose is and why you do the things that you do, and move forward.
Yeah. No, really good one. That as just to reinforce what Stephen said earlier, if anybody's struggling with that in any way, shape, or form, of course, as we've caused it, reach out to us and we can definitely have a chat. Don't mind who, or if you don't feel comfortable speaking to us, find somebody. I think the only other thing that we'd implore is, if this has had an impact with you, don't sit on it on your own.
Absolutely.
It's not helpful. There will be somebody that you will feel comfortable talking to about it, so please do. And like I say, if you want that to be us, then by all means do. So that's my only final thing I'd like to say. Is there any little final 2 bits from yourself?
Yeah, I would just say, believe in yourself and believe in what you can be. You have it in you, but you have to have a drive. There needs to be something, and if there's something driving you, I think it just makes everything come together. Makes everything make sense as well.
Yeah. Excellent. And breathe and relax. So I hope you found that useful. And like I say, if you think you need some help, reach out. Equally, if you think somebody else might value that and they haven't heard it, please send it their way. Otherwise, we will see you at the next episode.
Bye for now.